Well, the Prime Minister has addressed his new cabinet for the first time and promised to work flat out to repay the trust of those who voted for the Conservatives last week. But Labour has issued a warning about Boris Johnson's first significant move, which is to add a new clause to the Withdrawal Bill to ensure that further Brexit talks will have to be concluded by this time next year. Our Deputy Political Editor, John Pienaar, has this report.
Are we here?
Not a hair in place. It's showtime. His time, his cabinet, chorusing his pledges panto style.
How many new hospitals are we going to build? 40, correct. How many more nurses are we going to hire? 50,000.
The cabinet looks the same for now, but their new missions to deliver on Brexit for the party and for old and new Tory voters. The Brexit secretary had private doubts, but sources say he was overruled. So by law, Britain's to be clear of EU rules by the end of 2020, with or without a negotiated EU trade deal.
Is that deadline a real one?
The deadline's meant to build pressure for an agreement next year. Critics claim a messy exit, maybe a no-deal outcome, has grown more likely.
Negotiate a deal?
Both main leaders, the victor and his beaten rival, lead parties that are seeking a new way. The Tories to keep power, Labour to somehow win it back. The Commons looks the same today, but it isn't. Far fewer Labour MPs than before, and the new Speaker, dragged by tradition to the chair, will have an easier job than the last one. Why?
Prime Minister!
Because the Prime Minister's command of the Commons is total.
This Parliament is not going to waste the time of the nation in deadlock and division and delay. Mr. Speaker, I wonder if you can guess what this Parliament is going to do once we put the withdrawal agreement back. We're going to get Brexit done.
From the loser, a very different tone.
I would like to offer my congratulations to the Prime Minister on winning the election and being returned to office. And I want to pay tribute to those members from my party particularly who sadly lost their seats in the election.
Mr. Speaker-elect, the expanded SNP Westminster Group welcomes you to your new role. These are uncertain and challenging times. The public are now looking at this place for leadership.
Jeremy Corbyn's had a bad day at the office. The former Labour MP with her back to us was spotted at Westminster earlier, telling him to his face what she thought of him and his leadership.
Well, I saw Jeremy taking selfies with these young people, and I thought rather than grinning and smiling with them, he should be apologising to them. This was his campaign, his manifesto, his Brexit position, run by his people and his team.
At a packed private meeting, Labour MPs were overwhelmingly critical of their leader. One of them said the party had seemed economically illiterate. Jeremy Corbyn cited the effect of Brexit and a hostile media, but many of his colleagues pointed the finger of blame directly at him.
I do solemnly, sincerely and truly declare...
Some MPs have still to be sworn in. It's a different Parliament now, but life won't be easy for anyone. John Pienaar, BBC News, Westminster.
Meanwhile, the Conservatives have announced that a former Equality and Human Rights Commissioner will lead a long-promised review of discrimination in the party, including allegations of Islamophobia. Professor Swaran Singh will look at how the Conservatives, who've been accused of being in denial over the extent of Islamophobia in the party, have dealt with the complaints against them. Let's have more on events at Westminster. And as we've heard, Jeremy Corbyn was challenged robustly at a private meeting with his MPs, the first since Labour's poor result in last week's general election. One MP described an atmosphere of fury and despair. The scale of Labour's defeat and the looming prospect of a leadership race to succeed Mr Corbyn has prompted a lot of soul-searching in the party. Our special correspondent Alan Little has travelled to Labour's former heartlands, and he starts his report in Grimsby, which until last week hadn't elected a Conservative MP since before the Second World War.
What is it that broke that tenacious bond between Labour in Parliament and its working-class voters? Across the north, the roots of Thursday's revolt go back decades. As traditional industry fell into dereliction, the culture of organised labour in daily life that once shaped a powerful shared identity withered too.
There was no power in that side of the country.
David Pearce was once a trade union official in Grimsby. What was it like to vote Conservative for the first time?
I mean, I said, when I look up there, I don't know if I'll be let in, but Have I betrayed anybody? No, I haven't, because what was happening was making her worse off, so I've changed my opinion.
Who do you blame for the fact that Labour lost so much support here?
Jeremy Corbyn, because he's old-fashioned and you can't do that. You can't do what he was doing. You've got to accept 17.5 million. You've got to accept it. We've never belonged in the common market. We just don't belong there. You get your sovereignty back, it's a big thing.
Grimsby is one of Britain's busiest ports. Much of its trade is with the EU. Even so, Grimsby voted overwhelmingly to leave and, on Thursday, backed Boris Johnson's Conservatives. So where, if no longer here, are Labour's heartlands now? Manchester is one surviving Labour stronghold. This is prosperous metropolitan England. Here the Labour vote held up among the young, the college-educated, the socially liberal, middle-class professionals working in the health service and schools.
When I saw the exit poll, my heart just sank.
Junaid Alvi is 27, an accountant and a Labour Party member.
I think that idea that we can be that far left has been destroyed for a generation, probably. We tried and we failed. Labour stopped needs to be complacent. They took the working class communities for granted for too long, and now it's been clear that those communities are quite happy to vote for the Conservatives, so they need to appeal to those heartlands once again. We've lost by so many that it's clear that Labour can't just appeal to the middle class and the liberal elite, as it were.
In Scotland, this is the party of the old Labour heartlands now. SNP supporters in Glasgow North East celebrating taking every seat in a city that was once Labour to its boots. Working class voters abandoned Labour in 2015 and haven't come back. Scotland rejected independence 5 years ago, but will leaving the EU and 5 years of Tory government change that?
I think it's going to make the Scottish electorate more pro-independence, and it's going to make it more important to them.
What if Boris Johnson says, and he said it already, you can't have a second referendum?
Well, the way I was thinking about it is it's like a marriage. We've had this marriage, we weren't that chuffed about it at the beginning. We've got this marriage and I don't think it's working. I'd like to divorce you, dear. And the husband goes, no. So you're not just going to go, oh well, that's what your decision is. No, we really need to go. We need to be our own country, and if we make mistakes, hey-ho, we'll correct them.
Boris Johnson has redrawn the demographics of party loyalty to forge a remarkable alliance of industrial towns and prosperous shire counties. What will hold them together once Brexit is done? And what will hold the Union together after a Brexit backed by England and Wales alone? Alan Little, BBC News.